Hello world, this is Charlie. Yeah, thanks for everybody tuning in who's interested in our brand new plugin series, Controlled Mayhem. This is Charlie coming to you to do a rundown for the first two plugins. Actually, more precise, it's plugin chains, and they're called Controlled Mayhem, and they're brought to you by Ugritone. As some of you are already aware, I work closely together with these guys from Ugritone to develop some not so normal plugins like the Klangmacht drum sample library, or now even the Controlled Mayhem plugin chain series. Let me give you a short overview about my career and what actually led me to this plugin concept. Long time ago, I did some studying. Went to Berklee College of Music to study music production engineering. Actually, I'm a drummer. I also play some classical piano, but that's more or less it. So I know a little bit about engineering and production. Unfortunately, in my early career, I did not have a lot of possibilities to actually, look others over the shoulder, so to speak. There was no internet, so it was really hard to learn stuff. So I basically taught myself how to produce and do things that I really like to do. And to be perfectly honest, I was never the guy who really looked into what other people are doing. I am more like this self-contained guy who just wants to do his stuff as good as possible, and do some outstanding unique productions, and for that, of course, the mayhem thing is like very, very important in all the metal and hard rock genre. It lives off energy, and for some of you guys who might have been at the MetalCon in Berlin and actually have seen the drum production class I was giving together with Basti Emig, also from Ugritone and of course from Canto, great drummer. So you all actually already know what I'm after when I say mayhem. I just try to push every performance, everybody who's working with me to their limits, and and a little bit further even, and then I try to control it. And to control it, you have to either bring down the mayhem, or you create mayhem in a plugin. And that's what a lot of people for example, in mastering do. They they create some peaks on certain frequencies, so frequency dependent. Whenever your master hits these peaks, it will change the whole fluidness of the mix, and then you just press that down with a compressor back into the channel or into the signal, and that gives you a more of a lively vibe, something that's really is more alive. That's what I call mayhem. And to control this, because you can very easily go over the top, you have to come back and be able to control it so it comes out very nicely. So I'm not into all these plugins that tell you, hey, with one knob you can clean all the vocals and do all that stuff, or get a clean DI signal from a bass. It's you're losing all the texture. Even if some people do it differently, and that's fine, I really into getting all the in-between stuff out, like the breathing, the spit from the voice. The same with the bass, like brutality, and then like control it so it doesn't destroy your whole sound picture. So of course, let's get to it. Let's check the Controlled Bass Mayhem plugin. It's already open, and I'm gonna be playing you a little bit of the DI signal, so you can check it out for yourself. This DI was actually recorded by a good friend of ours, Randy van Elsen, bass player, And he was so kind to play on top of some of Basti's actually live played MIDI drums with his own Klangmacht plugin. But that's what it is. And this is the Control Bass Mayhem plugin is mainly designed for some straightforward bass DI signals. So let's play something and I show you what I mean. So let's play that again, and I just unbypass the plugin so you instantly will see what it does, and then I will just play around randomly to show you a little bit how fast you can change actually the the whole sound picture with the different modules of the plugin. Of course, I will get to it in a little bit. Let me just show you what I think is crucial. Here we go. So I think you get an impression, that you have a lot of possibilities. Of course, there's a lot of presets, but let me just go through. I'm gonna switch off most of the modules now and just try to show to you what every module is doing. I will get into technical stuff, even so I'm not like really a person of numbers and stuff. I just I want to have results, and I want to have some outstanding results or very unique results. That's what I'm after, and this is what this stuff is for. So let's switch off all that and start from scratch. I'm gonna turn down, as you see here, the compressor side. The whole plugin is divided in like two paths. You have a low path, which is going to handle all the low frequency below 100, below 150, whatever. Even go down to lower stuff. That will be handled on this side, though it's not going to get through the distortion and Brutalizer plugin. And at the end, both of these signals will be recombined and go through an equalizer, harmonic shaper, and multiband. But we get to that in a second. Let me just play you the bass just going through the low side, through the low path. Here we go. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit. I hope you can hear that. Over headphones, of course you can, but if you have some really small computer speakers, you might miss a little bit of that. But that's what it is. It's okay. So in our compressor, of course, all the signals are very dependent on the input signal. So we have a gain stage that allows you to, if you have recorded really hot, which I normally do, I have I'm way above minus 18 dB. So you have a gain stage that you can switch in and make the incoming signal even lower before you hit the input gain. And then you have the output gain. And on the low path, here we have a compressor plugin, which has another input control and an output control. Of course, most of our modules in the plugin also have the dry-wet, so you can parallel almost everything except the preamps, which doesn't make that much of a sense, but this is what it is. So our compressor is actually, a quite normal compressor, but it also has some tube-driven stuff, and that is, quite interesting to actually round off the signals a little bit. It's two different tubes, simulated tube circuits. The first tube model is a more warmer, rounder character and favors the even order harmonics. And tube B is more of the odd harmonics, so it gives you a little bit of a more aggressive sound. That doesn't play that much of a role in the low path, because we are really on very low material there, frequency-wise. But I think you have to be a little bit careful to not round off too many of your transients, even in the low end. So let's try that. So that's really subliminal. Sorry, my mouse just shut off my plugin. Of course, we have a ratio from very little compression to 1 to up till limiting ratios, and then going up even into clipper-like ratios. But I would leave it quite like that. You have a threshold. And of course, I would not go completely onto the attacks, even on the low end. So I still have a pounding and pulsing low end. We skip the preamp for right now, and I'm still going to show you a little bit. Okay, and the frequency split is just set, to split exactly between these two bands. So now let's bring in the high path side, and for now we only gonna be compressing it, and I'll show you some stuff here. From time to time, it's cool if you just watch your meters so you don't overblow it. But yeah, that just only compresses now the high side signal, which is above close to 100 hertz. And on that side, I normally use the preamp. I use it on the left side as well for some settings, but not for this one. And that's actually like more, almost like a Neve-like preamp, which has like two trafo stages, which you can, drive into each other. And it's basically a similar setup. The trafo, the transformer, just adds the harmonics, and the second one is a little bit more harsh, a little bit more bright, because it adds trafos which have more of an uneven harmonics there. So let's try that. Back. We have two filters. One is, with a couple of fixed set. I would keep the low end on, at least 100, because you're cutting off here at 100, so there won't be a lot of stuff happening below 100. So, if you turn that up to 250, oops, if it lets me. The second band is from 20 to 16 kilohertz, so you can do every frequency you want. And for, most of us, that would already, be a nice setup. Of course, if the strongest weapon in your arsenal is called the Brutalizer, you should not stop there. Let me show you what the Brutalizer does. It's basically like a 3-band saturation and distortion with included clipper, and you can denoise some stuff. I will get to that in a second. Let's just switch it on and see what it does. There's two different distortion settings or saturation settings. One is pushing more on the actually attacks, and the other one is a little bit rounder and a little bit more even. So yeah, but we have not even touched the clipper yet, which is like the strongest thing. Let's go back to nice for a second. And because everything in the chain is dependent on each other settings, so if you go back to the preamp and you boost like at around 4K, that's mostly like the aggressiveness in the octave between 2 and 4K. Let's try that. So what the denoiser is doing, it actually cuts off or denoises the input to the clipper, not into the distortion and saturation. I think, in the Brutalizer, you have, the dry-wet as well as in, most of the other plug-in modules, and that helps you to actually, control the brutalness. When we later on, I've decided to show you the full mode first. In the easy mode, that's all which you're gonna be able to adjust, and there is like our dry-wet, and when you when you bring in the preamp now on the low end side, and you're gonna hear quite some change. What the preamp in compared to the other preamp on the high pass side has is we incorporated a little module where you can actually put in some nice IRs. We prepared some for you, so let me just switch that off so you can actually see with no IR. That's an IR I made with an AC30, so it pushes the low end a little bit higher. You have to be careful to not kill your complete low end, but it makes it with the truffles and the IR from the AC30, it makes it a little bit warmer and a little bit more taking more space in the mixer. So let's keep it like that, because all this is now combined into what's down here. And the first thing I want to hit is like it's actually a pretty normal, straightforward 4-band, fully parametric EQ. All the bands go from 20 to 20 kilohertz. You can switch them in. Down here you have low shelf, high shelf, and peak, and you can switch them off, which is gonna give your computer a little bit more breathing. As soon as you switch off a band, it's not in the calculation, so it will not hit your CPU that much. We have a high pass and a low pass filter, so let's just put that in and see what happens. You have a full queue for all of the bands, and that should give you all the possibilities. I would be very careful in not cutting off too much, but sometimes for faster stuff, and I normally work with very fast bands, so to speak, and then it's quite good to have a control about the low end with a high pass filter. So we do. And of course also that has a dry wet, so I think that should be pretty much straightforward, like a 4-band EQ. The next plugin or the next module, that's a little bit of a beast. It's called the Harmonic Shaper, and it's actually another saturation plugin. It's not as brutal as the Brutalizer, but it gives you control. What you basically, kind of make very aggressive with the Brutalizer, you can scale back and, round it off a little bit with the Harmonic Shaper. The Harmonic Shaper has like 4 bands. A bass frequency which is on a set frequency, the same on treble, and you have a pre and post drive. Pre drives into the saturation band, and post is above the or behind the saturation stage, so you can actually play around with rounding off your signals. You have 2 different saturation controls, or saturation, how you call that? Saturation settings. Let's call it like that. It's my Harmonic Shaper. Here we go, and I have to read up. Okay, the dual one, when you switch it on, it actually gives you both the second and third order harmonics on each band. When you switch on second, you're gonna have the second order only. It's more warm, it's not as aggressive and less complex, but let's check it out what it does. Let's switch this on. Gets a little bit of like a moonstone kind of feel to it, but let's say Oops, sorry, my fault. Let's stay with the second order harmonics. Let's make it not that thing. You have a high pass filter, which, you know, which also gives you a resonance control. It basically makes the whole cutoff filter like becoming a little boost right before the frequency, so you can shape really nice where to cut off the Let's keep it fairly open. You have the next control is like the bass control. Here we go. So you're driving into the saturation. What's built in is like a compensate button. If you hit that, you just saw it, you know, the pre and the post jump. So now they are basically in opposite conjunction. If I turn up the post, you know, give it 2 dB plus, the pre sending into the saturation will be lowered by 2 dB. So you always have a perfect control what happens before and after the saturation stage in every band. So you have two presence bands in the Harmonic Shaper, which do basically the same thing, but you can actually freely configure them between 20 and 16K, 20 Hertz and 16K. So that's quite. And if you now start pushing your settings before going into the equalizer and harmonic shaper here at the Brutalizer, you already hear that everything is depends on what settings you're using in the other modules. So it's very, very versatile of getting different sounds and really parking in your sound with your drums and the rest of the music. So let's try that. We also have a compensation possibility. Yeah, and you can actually, it's the same thing. Yep. Let's get to the last one, and then I just was told to bring in the drums. So now the whole plug-in, the end, the final stage, so to speak, is a 4-band, fully multi-band compressor with a limiter stage as well in there, and that where you actually can now finally shape your outgoing signal. it just lets you park in your signal to the very detailed possibilities. And of course, no matter what you change now, going in before will change not only the frequency content, but also like, the vibe of it. And that's what I'm always after. I want to have a nice, possibility to create a very vibey and, characterful sound. So let me play around a little bit and, at the end here and show you. So when we now go over to the easy mode, then it gets pretty clear what's happening here and how easily you control. It's good if you know a little bit where to go to, and I will show you some presets and stuff. So you have a full arsenal on user presets and factory presets, which I actually made up of some recordings and live stuff I've done. Some of you guys might know that I do a lot of broadcast stuff, like the 2 main stages at Wacken, and this year I'm gonna also do Rock am Ring. And of course, I've been to a lot of festivals doing live sound. So I was able to use some of the incoming signals, bass signals, the DI signals, to actually make up a really nice little library. And of course, we also have, all my user stuff here. So yeah, I used it on, let me call up this one and show you. I was just in Japan with Helloween and doing a live show from Tokyo Garden for WoW TV, and that's what I used on the bass. That's the preset here. So no matter where you touch this plugin, you will change the sound and create something new. So it's really interesting. It might be a good inspiration for you guys to get into some maybe not so easy setups, but have something that you really can mold into your mix. So I think that's a really great tool. I would have loved to have that for a long time. I mean, I made up all these modules basically with other plugins, and I had like chains like hell. I first saw that, and now that we're gonna be doing a little bit of the vocal channel strip, I'm not gonna show you that. I'm gonna explain to you where this whole idea came from, because when I started out, of course, I did a lot, things by the book. I always was like, the kind of a, not rebel, but I even at school, I was not really liked by the teachers because I would always do something different. Where it actually comes from, in the very beginning, I was like doing a yeah, well, I didn't have a lot of experience doing metal. Let me put it like this, because I'm not a natural like metal fan from the time on, like a new wave of British heavy metal. I kind of missed that for whatever reason. I was totally into the sweet, and I had some Saxon stuff, and of course like denim and leather. I later on obviously worked with Saxon on a couple of albums, but I was more in Uriah Heep, Nazareth, all that stuff. So when the new wave of British heavy metal came in, I was kind of not following up. So my first real metal production that I did was like with Heaven's Gate in the beginning of the 90s, and of course the singer came to me and said, I would like to have a vocal sound like Rob Halford. And I went like, of course, no problem, I will give you that. I had no clue that Rob Halford was in Judas Priest and what they were actually doing precisely. And of course there was no internet back then, so I had to go over to the magazine store and buy Rock Hard magazine, and of course found out that Rob's singing in Judas Priest and is one of the leading, I mean, he is the metal god. Funny enough, like 8 years later, I was sitting on Tenerife together with Roy C doing the Dark Ride from Helloween, and he wanted to patch up the mixing of the Halford Resurrection album. And so we got the Pro Tools sessions over, and I opened this up, and I was like baffled with what they actually put onto his vocal chain. So it was like a EQ compressor de-esser, EQ compressor de-esser, EQ compressor de-esser. In when everybody nowadays says, "Oh, don't stack any plugins," that's exactly what they did, and they were all set to different frequencies, to actually capture all his mouth and everything he was doing, like every breath, every little snap, and of course I just saw that in this, and of course then we had to adjust it. So that was the first time when I started like thinking, oh, wait a minute, maybe there is something to it. If the metal god is doing it, why should I not doing this? So I went, further, and like 2 years later, actually in 2002, I was over in the US and actually worked on his Live Insurrection album. And he had wanted to re-sing a couple of songs that I actually haven't recorded live, but they still wanted to have on the album. So he came in and he actually performed, and I had the honor, of course, to record that. And that's when I saw him, like just blurring into like an SM58, and there was no pop filter, there was no it was all right there, and all this texture. That's what I was. After that, I just was searching for chains to actually give me the possibility to capture all this nice texture into one great sound, and that's where it all started. And of course then that just took off into the realm of guitar, bass, everything. And of course these are the first two plugins that we have. We have the controlled bass mayhem and the controlled vocal mayhem. So let's now go to the controlled vocal mayhem, and let's see what this one is doing. Now that you already saw like the bass channel, you will find a couple of familiar and a couple of not so familiar plugins. Of course familiar in any way, but not in our chain. So here we have the Brutalizer again, and we have the 4-band EQ. Then there's like a De-Esser, which I normally set to some frequencies that I boost heavily before. Then I have an upward expander, which gives me a tool to like lift up all the in-between breathing and stuff. And then I have another De-Esser, because sometimes that gets out of hand, and then the whole thing runs into a limiter. And we added a spreading plugin at the end there to make the whole thing take more space in the mix. So let me switch that off and I play you what I have here. I have a nice recording from Inga from Van Canto. Let me switch it back on so it stays here. So let's see.
Through the distance, crossing barren grounds, Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are.
Okay. Great performance. There's actually nothing wrong with that. I just would like to have it much more in your face, much more grippy. And, you know, that I would do. Let me just switch it on and I show you a little bit. I switched off the effects. I'm going to show you. This is all, you know, when now people go like, oh, I cannot live without this plugin or without that plugin. This is all normal stuff. It's a micro pitch, reverb one, blah, blah. It's a, you know, delay. I normally put a flanger after the delay. I learned that from Biff Byford. And, you know, I have another normal reverb that has been around for 30 years. And, you know, to make up my chains. Of course, I have everything and the kitchen sink as well, and, you know, all the plugins, whatever the client wants. But I would be more than happy to work just with that. So let's see what we have here.
Through the distance, crossing barren grounds, roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are. Now carry me through lack of light, through darkness. Take me to where no dreamer will die. Guide me through nights, lead me into the moment where dawn awakes once more forever. Falling within.
Okay. So you see, even like with the, you know, very soft voice like Inga, you know, it's great performed, but I can add some really nice spice to it and make it sit nicely in the track and give her some, you know, distortion, some saturation, and I show you what most of the stuff is doing. Let's switch these off. I mean, let's go back to what we have. Here we go.
Steps through the distance, crossing barren grounds, roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are.
Okay, this is the same Brutalizer that we have in the bass chain. Of course, you have to be a little bit more careful, so the dry-wet, you know, control comes in very handy. You cannot, I mean, of course you can, but it's, you know, let's hear it.
Steps through the distance, crossing barren grounds, roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are. Now carry me through lack of light, through darkness. Take me to where no dreamer will die. Guide me through nights, lead me into the moment where dawn awakes once more forever.
So, you know, I just, you know, get her some really nice high-endish rasp into her voice, which she normally doesn't have. And of course, if it gets too much, that's what I'm doing. I boost quite a bit at the, you know, octave again, which gives all the aggressiveness, guitars, anything is between 2 and 4K. And for that, I have a De-Esser, which I might set, you know, as you can see up here, you know, it's pretty much to actually duck down the distorted signal.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds, roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are.
So you can hear the sizzle like go away. So don't overdo it. You know, this is enough is enough. We don't have to kill it. Then we have the upward expander. That's the really nice feature here. Let me show.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds, roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us.
It just, the low gain, it's just basically brings up everything that is low level. You know, it's an upward expander for low level threshold input. So all the breathing, all the texture of the mouth gets boosted up, you know, quite a bit. And then of course we have the high gain, which is at 0, just doesn't do anything, but you can actually bring down the high compression signal.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence.
And we have a color tilt filter, we call it. It's actually exactly that's what it is. It's a tilt filter that can you set around, you know, a certain frequency, have it tilt above 2K or below.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren ground.
And you have a Q factor, so it's not just a straight line, but you know, it starts, you know, you basically become like a S-shaped curve, and you can do that with the Q.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren ground.
And then you can, with the gain, you actually tilt the whole thing into the high end.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found.
So you keep that fairly around 0, you know, to if you feel like you need more edge coming through, you give it, you know, slightly into the plus. Don't overdo it. It's, you know, very, very little is necessary to actually make it cut through more. Let's do that.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us lead to who we are. Now carry me through lack of light, through darkness. Take me to where no dreamer will die.
So, and finally we have, it's basically the same limiter we have in the multiband control of the bass.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us leads to who we are. Now carry me through lack of light.
We have like three basically like compression modes or limiting modes in there. One is very punchy, dynamic and flat, and you
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found.
now I'm gonna show you something that all of our plugins are actually do have. You can set them to almost 0 latency. So as long as you don't touch the release or actually the look ahead, the release is no problem, but the look ahead, you will have no latency. So you can use them for recording, you can use them in live situations. That's what's very important for me, that I don't sit here and have like plugins that sound great but do like 140 milliseconds latency, as some of them do, where you just go, yeah, it's great, but I cannot use it like that. So, you know, that was one of the things. So of course you can, you know, give it some look ahead and make it actually, it's easier even to punch it in. Let's give it 10 milliseconds look ahead, and we're gonna make it a little bit more in the release.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar. Every mile behind us.
So it still sits pretty much in the center. I'll show you what the spreader does, because that's a really cool tool. It actually spreads the voice, but it's completely mono compatible, and I will show you what happens, because a lot of the, if you have spreaders or chorus on your voice, when you fold it down to mono, it kind of starts phasing. This one doesn't. So,
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found. Lanterns lost to silence, guiding from afar.
So her voice now takes more space in the mix. Of course, that is dependent if there's heavy guitars around it, whatever. Then you have to be a little bit more careful. So you can have a very punctual coming out of the center, but you can also spread her out. And of course, you have the amount plus and minus, the width you can determine, and the tone. Around what frequency actually the widening effect is gonna take place. So I normally have that around 50.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren ground.
But you can push it up, so it's only the high end that gets spread out, and the low end stays more centered. But that's
footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found.
And now I'm just gonna bring in the panning, and you will not hear.
Footsteps through the distance, crossing barren grounds. Roads of faded memory where once our home was found.
So there's no phasing involved in this spreader. When you fold it down to mono, the voice stays clean as it was. So yeah, that's of course, Uppsala is a very, straightforward, more of a soft voice. If you use the same thing, let me do that. I'm gonna show you a little bit more, and then we are up. That has to go. Now let's go to a more AC/DC like kind of performance. Let's see here what we have. Let's switch it off. So even to totally overblown vocals like that, you add a character. Of course, if the performance is not there to begin with, it's gonna get hard, to add something. But even for these, of course, with a soft voice like Inga, it's no problem to add some really nice grasp and some, rock and rolliness to it. But on the already distorted stuff, it gives you in a finer mode, some possibilities to actually, come up with some adding texture. Of course, also this is completely with studio vocals, and I've done a lot of live vocals I also put in. So you might find a good starting point for the easy mode. Like I said before, you don't have to go into all the details, but sometimes it's good to remember, that at certain points you might have in the EQ, for example, if you have a high pass and you're wondering where your, low end is because you're saying, oh, I want to have that, then of course it's good, to quick, switch into the full mode and just have a peek on it. So.
Can you hear the call? Nothing can stop it. Like the rain I fall, 'cause I got ground to it. Whatever you are waiting for, I'm not gonna wait no more. The ways are deep, the mountain tall. I can hear the sounding walls.
So yeah, you can, I mean, of course, in the upper window, you can grab any of the EQ points and move them around, so you don't even have to open up the full mode to get to that. Always remember, there's also like a global dry wet, so you can have the dry signal go through. It really, is very dependent on each other things. You can do anything you want with that. I found that very helpful in my work, and I hope you guys gonna have the same. Let me play you one of the.
You can understand. You think I am real. The way that we will never be. Don't you try, because I know my own mind. Yeah, glorious we feel on our way to victory. Under our command, we will conquer promised lands like Vikings. You can't understand. You think I am real. The way that we will never be. Don't you try, because I know my.
Yep, this is like the a really growly one. I think that's my friend Steph from Ugritone. It's just like the frostbite awking stuff he has done, and of course that's already a very blurry voice and stuff. Let's listen to it without it, just to get.
You can't understand. You think I am real. The way that we will never be. Don't you try, because I know my own mind. Yeah, glorious we feel on our way to victory. Under our command, we will conquer promised lands like Vikings.
So that's basically it for these two plugins. I can assure you we are already working on some. This is our drum plugin for right now. We are still working out what's gonna go into this one, so that's gonna be coming up very soon. And of course there's gonna be a guitar plugin, which is gonna be really interesting, but that needs a little bit more work, so we are working on that. Of course, I know these are not your normal plugins, and it takes some, how can I put this? Takes a little bit of a learning curve. That's why we came up with Ugritone with the idea, because I really would like to get people into this, not cleaning out everything. Everything sounds so boring nowadays, or a lot of stuff. I mean, some other colleagues know exactly what I'm talking about. I just would like to give you some inspiration with these plugins, and I think they are a very good starting point to get all sorts of different stuff. Like I said, we're gonna spit out some more presets. I'm gonna use them more and more in my work, because of course now that we have final products and they are secure to have in sessions for live sessions, that's really necessary, so you cannot so it doesn't basically shut down when you try to call up a plugin. So they're fully blown. That's really nice. And of course, what we're gonna be offering, because I really have fun doing this, we're gonna be offering like one-on-one, basically coaching. So you can book me for half an hour, or whatever you feel like, and I show you how to incorporate the plugin into your setup. There's gonna be a couple of technical things that we have to take care on, and then I'm gonna be able to basically remote your session and just help you to do to find a cool setup, a cool starting point, and I give you some presets that might fit better to your music, no matter what you do. So that's gonna be coming up very soon on the Ugritone page. And I hope you guys had a little bit fun, or had the same as much fun as I had. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the hour is more or less over. Like I said, on the one-on-one coaching things, I will show you how to come up. My goal is, in the end, to have my whole session run on my own plugins, to give them, a very personal sound and be able to shape them. Of course, in the end, we're also gonna have a mastering channel on my master, if you could see one of my master channels, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of plugins in there, and that just gives me all the possibilities to tune in and get little things here and there. It's not that you use every plugin to its full capacity and full blown. You just add little touches here and there, and you get a much better result. I don't get it when people go, stop stacking plugins, blah blah blah. I just give you a one knob thing. If it works, fine. I would not go that way. I'm way more uniquely oriented and have my personal touch to it. And yeah, of course, I mean, I'm a big fan of waves, so there's some one knob stuff, and that it's all cool. But basically, I think you should have a lot of fun trying out some very unique stuff on your own, and getting there. And if you have trouble, like I said, you can book me anytime. Of course, I have to sleep as well, so we have to find a spot. But then I'm more than happy to show you and help you incorporating stuff like that into your sessions. So let's do that. I guess that's on the heavy blurring vocal thing.
You can't understand. You think I am real. The way that we were, we will never be. Don't you try, because I know my own mind. Yeah, glorious we feel, on our way to victory. Under our command, we will conquer promised lands like Vikings.
So let's go back.
You can't understand. You think I am real. The way that we were, we will never be.
So yeah, that's like, I mean, the spreader is doing there a lot, as you can hear, so it gives just way more size, and you can balance it in to whatever your mix allows you. And like I said, the tilt that, you can make it very muffled and very low-ended distortion, but of course, like, there's only so much that you can do without ruining it completely. But hey, if you have a certain spot where you want to have some special effects, I'm pretty sure you can get to that as well with these plugins. So, like I say, this is just fun to do. I really like it, and it's really done very well by everybody who, supported me in doing this. The guys from Ugritone, the guys from the audio group, they are so supportive and helped me when I had questions, and, how could we handle certain things. I'm very, very, my big thank you goes out to Axel, who from Audio Group, who really supported me on this stuff. So I'm very happy. I'm a happy camper. I hope you guys are too. I wish you, a very nice weekend. I hope you had some fun. And yeah, this is it from me. I would say thank you very much, and see you next time, which I hope is gonna be very soon. Believe me, I'm totally up for it. Here we go. Thank you. Bye bye.